to share another point about the Brisker Rav, which really an overall point when we analyze, look up to, deal with, come in contact with many Gedolim. The Brisker Rav was scary. And sometimes when we have a picture from a story or a Hasidic tale or something, we imagine a Gadol B'Yisrael. We imagine the person who someone walks into his office and gets a hug, and the Gadol has, unlimited time for him, and changes his whole life around, and it was a memorable conversation. And then we can go on a Gadol tour and perhaps one time get 5.5 seconds from someone who hardly looks at us. What's that about? So I don't want to deal with all of that, but part of that is taking our perceptions for what something should be, dealing with the ongoing day-to-day real-life reality of someone who has thousands and thousands of people talking to him and gabayim pushing, etc. But it is important to have our eyes up and be careful about our expectations. Now, besides the fact that people are busy, Gedolim are also different, right? There were Gedolim that were shofeya, warmth, love, ava, and there were definitely Gedolim that were less that way. They did chesed in their way, they had Av Yisrael in their way, and you can't always judge from the outside. That's what I wanted to speak about a little bit with the Brisker Rav, and I wanted to give an example first from Ravshach. And so the issue we're dealing with is, well, on the one hand, the Brisker Rav was so scary, and people were, trembled in front of him. How was he with the Klal Yisrael? So I always like to give an example for Ravshach, because I think many people, when they hear about Ravshach, audio of him, and they know he had all types of battles, he was a lochem melchemes Hashem, and we don't know how to make sense of that. I'm not going into the particulars of the different milchamot that he had. That's not at all the point. But the point is seeing the different layers of a person. Ravshach certainly saw his job was to defend the Yiddishkeit which he believed in, and he had reasons for doing it. And when you hear him, so you hear like a video, and he's speaking in a very, very scary way. So you imagine, he must have been like a really, really tough person. So I'll tell you, I have a Rebbe, I'll leave his name out, but he was very, very connected to Lubavitch, Lubavitch Rebbe, and he told me he has personal issues, with Ravshach, who of course, made a milchama with Lubavitch. We're not going into that. Milchama, no reason for us to even taking sides. That's not the point at all. But that same Rebbe told me that he visited one time Ravshach as a younger person. He said, when I went to see Ravshach, I was enveloped by his warmth. Enveloped. So you have a public persona, which is a lochem, a battler, tough, standing up for principles, and then you have the full person that was something totally different. And we make a very big mistake by seeing one aspect and not taking the other aspect. And really it's about thinking about things a little deeper and more comprehensively, a little more holistically, to know that there are different aspects. And I'm not even saying this is right, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is right. We're not talking about that. We're talking about seeing the whole of a person, particularly with Gedolei Yisrael, to dan l'kav schus about Gedolei Yisrael, and to realize there's so much more than meets the eye. And if I run into that gadol, attaching to what we said at the beginning, who's really, really quick, that doesn't mean that he doesn't have concern or that anything. We have to be very, very careful in judgments. I'll add one more thing before we jump into the Brisker Rav itself. It's been said that sometimes people are dan l'kav schus to everybody. One people they don't dan l'kav schus to is the gedolim. They have no chesed kashrus. They have no rights, so to speak. They have no chance with us. That's a terrible, terrible approach. With dan l'kav schus to other people, all the more so we have to dan l'kav schus to people who are so great and so Torani and so Torah-dik and are so busy with Klal Yisrael. So let's talk about the Brisker Rav himself. As I said, the Brisker Rav certainly, when you see him in the pictures, there are some pictures of him smiling, but generally look, very, very stern, and certainly people around him, sensed attention, sensed the yira. Yitzchak was his name, Yitzchak Shmo. He had midas gvura, no question about it, and that he brought that. When you went to speak to the Brisker Rav and learning, you didn't just say something silly. You realize you're sitting next to greatness, and you had to be very, very careful. And someone, Brisker, told me one time, a cousin of mine, Yossi, says, the Brisker Rav, if you tell him a bad svar, if you tell him something not accurate and learning, it didn't go in. He didn't hear it. He didn't have a kli kibul. He didn't have a receptacle for bad svars, for not straight things. You just wouldn't hear it. But that's one beautiful side of the Brisker Rav. The pachad, the ema, the exactness, the dikduk and halacha, the defender of the faith. But there was another side of the Brisker Rav. I heard from something Ravari Fredman, who was a Talmud of Rav David Soloveitchik, that someone went into the Brisker Rav one time and they saw him, I think if I remember correctly, literally lying on the floor crying. It could be it was soon after the Chazon Ish had passed away, and I think the Brisker Rav outlived the Chazon Ish by about 10 years or so, and he was feeling the full achrayus of the tzibur on him, and he quoted a pasuk in Nach, and he was crying deeply on who have you sent it, who have you left its own? Ami zanachta meta vatzon, I think it's the pasuk. Who have you left meta vatzon? I have to now handle this. And he was, overwhelmed in a moment of softness, of hachna'ah, in that situation. I recently read a account by, I believe it was Rav Tzal Rakaw, who was the Rav of Gateshead, who was close to the Brisker Rav when he was younger. And he went into the Brisker Rav one time, and the Brisker Rav was walking back and forth, and he was all concerned and full of machshava. He was full of thought. He says, there's so few people who really get it. People understand what it's about, know what the world is, and this is on his mind. That concern for Klal Yisrael, that concern for Kavod Shamayim, that worry. So it's not like the contrast of Ravshach being a lochem outside, super warm to everybody inside, but is a contrast of absolute sternness and surety and absoluteness and fear to really handling the ol of Klal Yisrael, really handling the tzibur's needs, being deeply concerned with them and deeply concerned for how to be madrich the tzibur, how to take the tzibur, in which ways, and to living with both of those poles.